Robyn Lock, welcome to Hobby of a Lifestyle. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh no, thank you very much for coming on. So Robyn, we are now colleagues,
We are.
and I'd heard about a little rumor that you used to play some elite sport, and I thought, oh, let's find out about it. And the journey just got more amazing. But what elite sport did you used to play, just for listeners?
So I played rugby. I played rugby for Wales. So I've got 6 caps
Wow.
for Wales, 5 as back row, 1 as hooker, which is just a whole different playing field. But yeah,
Yeah,
rugby
very
started
good.
when I was 19.
So you only started when you were 19. Wow.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, okay, well, that's kind of, as a child, as all podcasts do. I feel like I say that on every podcast as well, but we do. We go back to, as a child, what were you, kind of, where did you grow up and what were you into?
I always so my first sport was netball.
Okay.
And I dabbled a little bit with majorettes, which is like a marching band, but that's not a sport. But I'm just saying, like, I'm multi-talented.
All
No,
right. Okay.
but I always grew up watching. So my dad played rugby, my stepdad played rugby, my mum played rugby. My mum played rugby for England A, actually. Dad had like a very decorated career in the army, playing for the army rugby team.
Right.
And dad also got to like England Colts. So like I've always been in like rugby's been a part of like my, I was always on the pitch on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
sideline as a child, like watching my mum play, my dad play. I remember once saying to my mum, apparently when I was like 7, I went, I get it now. So girls play rugby and boys play football. And she was like, it was one of the best things you ever said.
It is.
But
That is brilliant.
I then just like growing up in school, kind of like always was a big fan of rugby and was like, I love what I watched my brother play loads. Like my brother played for Hartbury, and Wotton Bassett, but there wasn't really the opportunity
Yeah.
for me as a young girl. So then when I got to school, I kind of like swayed towards netball just because there was way more opportunity. So probably got my first taste of like competitiveness and like, oh, I like winning. I want to be the best I can be in netball.
Okay.
And then when I went to uni, I was like, right, I've done my bit of netball. I want to try something new. And kind of like stumbled into rugby, really. Tried rowing, but rowing, they were like, oh, we get up at 5 and we meet down the dock. I was like, no, thank you. I tried hockey. I was really, really shit at hockey. Because I was like, they were like, you can't, like, it's not a golf club. I was like, right, sorry. But
Yeah.
like looking down and like trying to figure out, plus like people who go to uni who play hockey have played hockey forever. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not being the shit person in the team. And then I was like, do you know what? I'll like go along to the rugby like taster session. And I just didn't look back.
I suppose that's one of the good things about university, isn't it? It opens your eyes up to sports that maybe
Yeah.
weren't accessible when you were a child.
Yeah. Like you're exposed to like 52 different sports.
Yeah.
So like in school, it's very traditional, isn't it? Like, yes, I tried a bit of hockey in PE, badminton, tennis, athletics, netball. But when you go to uni, then there's like, there's martial arts, there's like judo, there's a
Yeah.
weightlifting like as a sport. I was like, oh, I didn't realize that you could do
Yeah.
it as a sport. Rowing, like there's all ultimate frisbee, there's all these things. So I think uni's
Love
great for that
the
because
game
if
of
you're
ultimate
somebody
frisbee.
who's like wants to dip their toe in other sports or like find your identity
Yeah.
in a different sport, you can feel pretty amazing playing sport at uni.
One of those things, when when you talk about those different sports there, you think, I'm not really going to make it at elite level if I'm going to university and I'm dipping my toe in different sports. It's more of a social thing?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the statistics are on that, but it'd be interesting to see how many people go from picking up a sport in university to elite level.
I think in the women's probably less so now because I think the profile of elite women's sport is higher,
Yeah.
with professionalism of women's football and women's rugby.
Yeah.
You probably get more young girls growing up aspiring to do it the same way as what's the chances of you starting football as a lad at uni
Yeah. Yeah.
and then being picked up and going into academy and playing for
Yeah.
like Manchester United?
Yeah.
Highly unlikely now because it's a career option.
Yeah, of
So I
course.
think it'll get less, but I guess yeah, when I was so well, there was myself, Natalia, John, Who else got picked up? Ruth Lewis, Cara Hope. There was like 5 of us that got picked up from the uni side.
Wow, that's pretty impressive,
Obviously,
isn't
like
it?
then went through like regional setup.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so they were like, so Swansea University used to be quite a big recruitment pull for, and quite a few of those girls started at uni
Right. Okay.
just
So
because of access to clubs
you,
as a young girl growing up is less.
yeah, yeah, and so you've tried out rugby, obviously been in and around it all your life with your family.
Yeah.
Was it kind of an instant hook for you when you started playing that first game,
Yeah, I
doing
think
that
when I,
first training session?
yeah, I remember we had, so the training, I was like, yeah, this is fun, this is great. Ah, cool. Got to the first game. Mum and dad came down to watch. I was cacking my pants. I was so nervous. And it was just like a uni league game. It wasn't like a, right, it's the final of like the league or it's a cup game or whatever. It was just like, this is the first game of the
Yeah.
season. Like, we'll see what you've got. And I remember, oh, in netball, I used to always be like pulled up for contact. I was always like, oh, do you know what? If I could put a shoulder on you, you won't be so bloody cocky. And obviously it's a non-contact sport, but I
Oh, yeah,
really
well, that's
enjoyed
probably
that.
why we're called them.
I enjoyed like the quick reactions that you need in netball, like the fast thinking, the forward planning, like the game plays that you had
Yeah,
coming to netball, all of the speed of it I loved. But then rugby, you had all of that, but you didn't stop moving until somebody got you to the floor. I was like, okay. Like, so then my like strength and power became like a bit of a USP. So I played in the centre my first game and I scored 3 tries.
wow.
And like just typical like inside centre. I didn't really have the skill set to pass out to my outside centre. But and I remember my captain saying to me, don't worry, this it's your first game. Don't worry about passing the ball or flinging it, or as they say in rugby, shoveling shit. Don't shovel shit. Just keep hold of the ball
Yeah,
until you get to the floor and present it back. I was like, okay. She was
I
like,
can
don't
do that.
pass, do not pass. And yeah, I had like 3 like just bust breakaway tries up through the middle. I was like, oh my God, this is fun.
Well, I'm good at this sport.
I was like, so you get through them and then you just keep running and then you put the ball there, like, yeah, that was brilliant. So then that was me. I was hooked then, and obviously just spent the rest of my uni time like perfecting and like making sure that my game was a little bit more well-rounded as opposed to one-dimensional inside centre that doesn't pass and just trucks it up the middle, crash ball centre.
Uh, wow. And you're perfecting these skills. I'm sure you've probably got a couple because you've been in and around the sport watching and you played netball and all that. I suppose passing the rugby ball is very different to passing the netball.
Yeah, yeah.
Very different. At what point during that university kind of season do you start going, I don't just want to play for the university, I want to play for a local club? Or is there a coach coming to you and going, actually, you know what is, Robyn? You're actually talented. Why don't you come and join a local club? Why don't you move to this level?
Yeah, so actually it was she was my Shuan, so she was Shuan Lillycrap. She's like 50 plus cap player,
Right.
captain of Wales. She now coaches the under-18s women's side for Wales. She's amazing. But also I played rugby alongside her, so she's been my captain for my club. She's been my captain when I played in Ospreys, but she also became the uni coach. Um,
Right.
but she didn't become the uni coach until I was in my 3rd year. But she had just, I think she just, when she came to watch like that, our round of first games, she just left uni. She graduated, but she was kind of still working at the uni. So she just came down to watch the game. And I remember her saying to me, oh, where have you played before then? I was like, oh, I haven't. And she was like, right, you need to come to my club. You need to
Really?
come and play in Neath. So I pretty much from my first game, you know, I wouldn't have probably seeked it out myself, but
Yeah.
because like I just guess with like that kind of uni tribalism, even though you graduate, like even to this day now, I'm still interested in what the Swansea Uni rugby team are doing and how they're
Yeah.
performing. So I think there's that tribalism. So to have then those graduated girls who, Shuan grew up in Wynarloedd, so she knew Swansea rugby landscape really
Yeah.
well. And for her to say, right, come on then, you're gonna come and play for Neath.
Mm.
And then so I played club rugby and I played uni rugby. So I was playing on a Wednesday and a Sunday. And then I just think I just loved it so much. I think before I went, right, I want to play for Wales or I want to play for Ospreys, the region. I was just like, I just really enjoy it,
Yeah,
and I'll soak it all up. And I think that was probably what allowed me to get so high, was that I was just like, just worry about enjoying it.
yeah, yeah,
And then all the other stuff will just follow, because you'll get better, you'll become more skilled, you'll become kind of smarter in the game, more established as a player yourself. And
yeah.
I was just worried about loving it and enjoying it. And, you know, with rugby, there's quite a big social side of it as well, which I'm quite a sociable person. So that suited me
Massive.
down to the ground. So yeah, I probably didn't, and I never really, I was surrounded by girls and women who were in the Welsh setup and played
Yeah.
at an elite level. So I think I learned a lot through them whilst I wasn't in the setup.
But yeah, at
Yeah.
what point when you're playing alongside these women who are in the elite setup, and you're talking about they're just soaking things up, being a sponge, enjoying the moment, enjoying the kind of journey that you're on. But at some point, there must have been a turning point where you've went, I'm actually playing alongside people who are at elite level.
Yeah.
I back myself against those. So when do your aspirations go from actually I just want to enjoy this now to okay, now I want to go and represent the Ospreys because the Ospreys represent an opportunity to get into the Wales national team?
Do you know what? It was when I trialed for the Ospreys and I didn't get in. And
Okay.
Alan Flowers was our coach, and he was really sweet. Like, he was like, look, like, I remember them saying to me, like, Robyn, you got to hit that ruck. And I'm like, I don't know what a ruck is. Like, why am I here in this trial? Like, this is crazy. And he said, like, you've got it. You need to, there's a lot more you need to learn about the game before
Okay.
you can kind of sit in that regional shirt. And he was like, but keep turning up to training, keep doing what you're doing. Um, and then obviously I kept playing and stuff. And then people just started to be like, because I'm English, grew up in Swindon, so I had to wait for Welsh residency.
Right. Okay.
And every year people are like, are you Welsh yet? Are you Welsh yet? And I'm like,
Are you
no,
Welsh? Yeah.
I've got 2 more years until I'm Welsh. And they'd be like, oh, and I remember the Welsh coach, Roland Phillips, who actually brought me into the squad. So I'd always be very grateful for Roland. I played rugby with his daughter, Caris Phillips, who's an unbelievable hooker. She plays for Harlequins and Welsh. She, like, Caris is one of the most skilled front row I've ever seen in my life. She's
Wow.
brilliant. But I played with her, and he would come down to the games and he'd be like, when are you Welsh? Talk to
When
me.
are you
He's like,
Welsh?
have you got Welsh blood? I'm like, I'm really sorry, I haven't. My mum's English, my dad's English. He's like, right, okay. So it's residency. He was like, okay, when did you come to uni? And he really like talked to me about it. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, like you're not just having a joke, like you actually think I've got it. And so from then on, I was like, ah. And then unfortunately, when I was 21, I was at uni, I was going into my third year. I was I became quite unwell, and I was actually diagnosed with lymphoma, Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a form of blood cancer. And I think so. Then through my diagnosis, they were like, "Look, you've got to move back home. We'll transfer. You can't stay at Swansea Uni." My mum was living in New Zealand at the time. She came to look after me, and they were like, you need to go through treatment. You can't play rugby because there's too much risk to rugby in
Yeah.
terms
Yeah.
of a lowered immune system, playing outside in the mud, like it's full contact with other girls, like your body will be weakened, you can't play rugby. And I think the minute someone told me I couldn't, I was like, yeah, because the next time I play, I'll be playing for Wales. Like, that's why. Like,
Really.
don't pull it away from me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think having it taken away from me, I realized then, like, oh shit, I'm not done. And I actually do want to put on a Welsh shirt and like sing the national anthem and
Did
represent
that
my country.
almost become a bit of a motivating point to beat cancer?
Yeah, it definitely, and I don't know whether I probably like, actually, after having the all clear and going through my treatment and now being fine, I had to do a lot more work on myself, like in terms of like my psychology. And there's moments of that year that I just have no memory of. And my sole focus was to stay fit and healthy and strong for rugby. And then having chemotherapy and trying to beat cancer and like having a relapse scare was all just like a bit of a side story. Like, I was like, am I?
I think it kind of shows a mental fortitude, the fact that you look at it as a bit of a side story towards getting towards those Welsh caps. But
Yeah,
you know, I think
I
about
just
this.
couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't be the girl that went off for a year to have because she had cancer, and oh bless her, she's come back, and before she was ill, she was this unbelievable player, and she was on the road to getting into the Welsh setup. I was like, that can't be my story. I can't have this thing that's growing inside me dictate to me what I'm going to do in my life. I was like, nah, you're actually like, welcome to my show.
Yeah, yeah.
It's what you're here for a bit, then you're going to go because you're doing my head in. But by the way, whilst you are here, here's what I'm focusing on. It's like, and I remember getting the all clear and then coming back to rugby and going into the regional sevens like setup. I think it was like 4 or 5 months after I'd like had my pick line taken out. I had this like really cool buzz cut. I was like slim and ripped, which I'm not anymore. But I was like, and I remember playing, and it was just a training session, but we were playing touch, and I was playing, and Shuan looked at me and she was like, Lockie's back. I was like, she's like, this is unbelievable. Like, how did you have cancer like in your body 5 months ago? Like, and now you're back, and like you're like running past everyone in fitness and things like that. But I also hadn't been beaten up playing rugby for a year. So like everyone else was carrying aches and pains and injuries. Whereas I was like pretty much had a year to
I'm
not
saying,
to
yeah,
chill
yeah,
out,
but then to
but
be fair, you've probably been beaten up far worse. And I think it's,
yeah,
you talk about it so openly and almost not flippantly, but you so good at kind of going, well, that was just a stage in my life that I had something I had to deal with and I had to move on with it. And
yeah,
I remember when we were chatting, you said something to your mother that you didn't want to come back and be known as the girl who'd just had cancer and maybe be looked as weak and
yeah,
frail. You actually said, well, I want to come back and I want to go and push on with my rugby. And so you had that plan from day one almost, that you were going to kind of try and stay as fit as possible throughout that journey. And once you got the all clear, you were really going to push on again. But
yeah,
I think, if there's anyone listening, especially you look at young people as well, and I think as a father of 3 girls, to have kind of role models like yourself that are out there inspiring next generations and whatnot, there's a true story of resilience there. And it's very easy to go, yeah, I had cancer and then I got over that and now I play rugby again. But even if you talk about from the mental side of things as well, as a young lady who's probably, in the prime of her life, enjoying university and shouldn't have a care in the world, to be told, well, actually, you're going to have to leave uni. You're not going to be able to stay where you want to be. You're not going to play the sport.
yeah.
How did you navigate and deal with that?
Um, yeah, I remember my consultant, um, like initially I went in because I just had shortness of breath. And then they thought I had TB, I had pleural effusion on my lung. Anyway, turns out he was like, oh, have you got any lumps or bumps? And I was like, eh. He was like, can I feel your neck? And he felt it, and I just felt him like, okay, like a doctor does, like, oh,
Yeah,
right, okay. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. But I was still oblivious. I still thought I had tuberculosis. And I was like, 6 weeks of medication, and then I'll be right as rain,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
I'll get back to playing rugby. And don't worry, girls, I'll be there ready for pre-season and all this shit. And then my mum, my mum's best friend, my auntie Karen, came to see me in the hospital, and then she rang my mum and was like, "You need to get over here. She's like so unwell." So like my fighting weight's about 75 kilos. No, it's much heavier than that now. I lie. I'd like to get to 75 kilos. Currently, right now, I'm a little bit heavier than that. But
We
at
were
the
allowed to
time I
be.
was about 50 kilos. So I was tiny, like, so me being like, yeah, I'll play on the wing. I'm slim
Yeah,
now. It's me. But yeah, so I had yeah, I don't know, I just remember like being a little bit oblivious to it because it just was not on my radar at all.
yeah.
And then when we got to the scope of it, and it was in my lymphatic system, and it had spread into my lungs. So I was stage 4
Um,
Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I remember just saying, I don't know, I'm a bit of a sucker for a plan. I like to have a plan in terms of, have I got my shit together, yes or no? Like against my own standards.
yeah,
So when he was like, look, it's cancer. I was like, okay, so am I going to lose my hair? he was like, well, you will have to have chemo and a side effect. And the
Yeah.
reason why you lose your hair is because it attacks fast growing cells. So your hair, your nails, eyelashes, things like that will be impacted. I was like, and I just looked at my mum and went, right, so we need to get headscarves. Like, and just was like, let's start making a
Yeah,
list.
yeah.
Mum was like, oh my God. And I was like, and am I going to die? Am I going to die from
You're
this?
saying this, yeah.
And he was like, well, lymphoma, we're really lucky about 25 years ago because of donations, there's been a breakthrough in research. So the survival rates of lymphoma are really favorable. So, but obviously he can't be like, no, you're not
Yeah,
going
of
to
course.
die,
Yeah.
because who knows? And he was like, and he did say to me, and if I'm a betting man, which I'm not, I put money on you being back on the rugby pitch because you're healthy, because you're active. I think everything will you'll still be able to live your life, he said. And I looked at mum and I went, well, okay, so we haven't got to plan a funeral. Well, that's good. And my mum was just like, you were just in like, I don't know, straight away into fight mode, which I think was a little bit detrimental after I kind of finished my chemo. I had my PICC line taken out and I was like, right then, what happens now? And they were
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, you just wait for a month and we'll see you in a month. And I was like, okay. So I just hang around for a month. And I was like, I was still in fight mode. So I don't think I'd ever properly processed it.
Yeah, yeah.
So it wasn't until I went back to uni and I was playing rugby that I was like, okay, I actually need to get some counselling and speak to somebody. But I think that mental toughness was great initially because it allowed me to like armor up and crack on and then be like, right, PMA, positive mental
Yeah.
attitude, like, let's do some like good self-talk. Let's like get G'd up for this. This is something that's going to happen. And here's our timeline, and then be done. And I can crack on with my life.
Yeah.
But I also really discovered like the power of like journaling, like whilst I was having treatment
Right.
and like processing the shit days, but also then going, right, you can have those days, but make sure that they are buddied up or married up with some good stuff. Like every day you want to lie in bed and go, this was okay because this happened today, as opposed to like just going into this downward spiral of like cancer treatment, like medication, losing hair, feeling weak, like migraines, anxiety, which I had all of that, but I
Yeah.
was like, I can't. So like when I talk about my story now, you know, I may sound flippant or, but I just feel like I don't want to give it any mind, pay it no mind,
Yeah, yeah. No, I
because it
obviously I
was
don't
there and it
understand, but I
happened.
can see why you might want to do that as well.
Yeah,
It's been
yeah.
part of your journey that you've now left behind. And
Yeah, and I think now I'm definitely okay to talk about it and, you know, quite a big advocate for like, you've got to know your normal and what's normal for you. So for me to be breathless and tired and lethargic was not my normal.
yeah, yeah.
So anything that's like not your normal, you need, so like getting to know yourself and your body and what's normal for you, like you need to know where you sit on your spectrum. So then anytime it doesn't feel normal, that's when you need to seek medical advice.
Yeah.
So, like for me, I learned quite a lot about myself, but looking back, I guess it's quite easy for me to talk about the good, what good came of it, because it's part of my story. And if I
Yeah,
then
yeah.
sit here and go, I'm a victim because I had cancer, like 1 in 2 people are going to have cancer. So
Yeah.
you imagine half the population just sits in victim mode. It's going to be no good for
Yeah.
like anybody, no good for the other half of the population,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
50% of the people they meet are going to be sat in victim mode and woe
Yeah.
is me because, and of course, my story was actually one that was quite, I was okay.
Yeah.
Like I had chemotherapy. I I was quite fortunate. I didn't need radiotherapy. I did have a relapse scare, but it was just a scare. I didn't need to go into like a second bout of
Yeah.
treatment. So my story was okay. And I know that other people's story is pretty horrendous. And, you know, my story is cancer, but somebody else's story could be battling with mental health and
Yeah.
anxiety and depression. Someone else's story can be a long-term health condition. Someone
Yeah.
else's story can be an awful upbringing where they've got indoctrinated with abuse. Like, so shit happens. And I think, you know, I could sit here and be like, woe is me. I was 21 and I had cancer. Isn't that really sad? Feel sorry for me. But I also know some people around me who have got it far, far worse. And
Yeah.
I'm like, so yeah. Like if I wouldn't say I'd go back and do it all again, but also I'm glad that that was my story as
Yeah,
opposed to other
course.
ways that it could have gone.
No,
So yeah,
well,
it's like pinch of gratefulness, but also like shit does happen, and your shit wasn't as big as some other people's shit. I say shit a lot, sorry.
yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to bleep them out. I'm just going to leave them in there.
Yeah, because the whole conversation would
They'll
be
just
like,
be
"Bleep,
bleep, bleep,
bleep,
bleep.
bleep, bleep."
No, no, and you know, thank you so much for sharing that part of your journey with us, because I do think it's really important to highlight. It is part of your journey, but as you say, it might help somebody else, or it might
Yeah.
just highlight the fact that life isn't always easy, and it
Everyone's
doesn't
yeah.
choose what age you're at either.
Yeah, and everyone's met with adversity. Like everybody has met in their own form, whether that is like,
You know, playing in sport, whether you are like on the back-to-back injuries,
Yeah,
that means you don't play for a year, whether it's, you know, health-related issues, which means you have to stop playing sport. You know, everyone's got their story. Yeah, and I guess like I then from that I grew like a fascination of people, like the people that I met, like whether it was like an oncology nurse or a consultant, or when I was in the gym and I had like personal trainers training with me, or you know, a fitness instructor, or like whoever it was. I'm just like, the way you present yourself in the world has an impact on every single person that you see or speak to or look at.
yeah,
So and I'm so grateful for the NHS, and I think I really struggle when I hear people bash it. I'm like, oh, you have no idea what they do for people. Like,
yeah,
stop. But you know, when like you just see people that are just there to try and make sure you're okay, whether they're speaking to you for like 30 seconds or whether they're there from day 1 to day like 80,
yeah.
that so I think that I learned quite a lot about that as well. Like, oh, do you know what? How I show up in the world will really impact people around me.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
I agree. Right. So we've done the hard part. We've said shitloads. Well, you have. I've just said it once. Let's move on. You have came back
Yeah.
from cancer, and you are back at uni now.
Yeah, went back to uni.
But just tell people, by the way, because people will be listening to this going, oh yeah, she's into rugby, she's into sport. She'll definitely have done a sport degree. What was your degree in, Robyn?
My degree was in marine biology. And my dissertation was on the protein content of barnacles. A mouse in a house or an elephant in a tent. That was,
Really?
don't ask me how it relates to anything. In the end, I started to spell, instead of barnacles, I would write barnacles because I was just so over my dissertation. They were like, you've got some typos. I was like, I don't care, submit it.
Okay.
I'm over
And
it.
you are the person who pretends to be a dolphin trainer, aren't you? When she
Yeah,
goes,
yeah.
oh yeah, I'm a dolphin trainer and I've
But you know,
actually got a
when I
degree to
started
prove
looking
it.
at jobs, I was like, oh, right, jobs for marine biologists. I was like, okay, SeaWorld. No, I don't want to work in SeaWorld. Teacher. No, I don't really want to be a teacher. Post-grad, I was like, I ain't doing post-grad. So I was like, yeah, well, I also really enjoy sport. And I like, alongside my like academics, like my life was sport, whether I
Yeah,
was coaching, like working with kids and like coaching kids, playing myself. So I was like,
I love it.
I might just go down that route.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
But
So
yeah,
you got back into the university team,
yes, I did.
playing club rugby again.
Yeah, and I went back and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to come back and I'm gonna run to be captain. So I got my captaincy. I think there was a bit of a sympathy vote there, but I did turn out to be an all right captain, I think. But imagine that, they like that.
But did you just take it anyway? Yeah, I'll take it. I'm not
Like,
bothered.
excuse me, do you know what I've just been
Yeah.
through?
Yeah. Do you know what?
Yes,
I am that person.
I came back and I put myself up for captaincy, and you know, I was really lucky that the team like believed that I could do it and gave me the chance, and I loved it. So yeah, went back to uni rugby, went back to regional rugby. So went and played for the Ospreys
Yeah.
in their regional rounds, and from there I got picked up. So I was diagnosed with cancer on the 14th, I lie. 2nd of November 2014. That's where the 14
Okay.
comes into it. And I was called up into the Welsh squad on the 2nd of November 2019.
Wow. Written in the stars.
Yeah. And do you know what? I phoned my mum and I was like, "Oh my God, I've been announced in the Welsh squad." And she was like, "Rob, do you know what today is?" I was like, "It's the 2nd of November." She was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I know. What? Why? What's happened? Have I missed someone's birthday?" She was like, "No, it's your diagnosis date 5 years ago." I was like, "Oh my God."
Wow. That kind of hit
Yeah.
home a little bit.
Yeah, it did. And obviously I put it up as my Facebook status, and then our media manager, Liz at Welsh, jumped all over it.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Quick. So I was I had a bit of like a media.
Well, the girls took the mick out of me. They were like, "Here she is. Ain't even got a cap, and look at her. Media's
Media
all
circus.
over her, like flies on shit."
And
But yeah, so I did get some shit for that. But
that's so good though. When you get your first cap, how do you receive that? Is it a phone call? Is it a letter? Is it how do you receive that?
so we were in our rounds of autumn internationals. So we were playing Scotland, Ireland, and who was the other one? Spain. Scotland, Ireland, Spain. But before that, we'd had some warm-up games, and I hadn't made the warm-up games. I can't remember what it was, but basically I was in the squad and I hadn't quite made the match day team for a while, which was fine because I wasn't expecting that. Like I was alongside some very seasoned back rows, and I was just like, I was there to soak up everything and like revel in being there and making it, and like going, "Oh my God, I'm wearing the free feathers on my chest." Even just on my training top, I was like, "This is amazing." But Ryan Jones was our performance director, and he was like at every training session. I have a lot of respect for Ryan Jones. He was there at every training session, like really embedded like his knowledge as being like Welsh captain and like a British Lions, like he like into the squad. Bearing in mind at the time, like none of us were paid professionals. We're all doing it like for free. But expected to behave and perform like professionals against other paid professionals like the England girls. So we'd had loads and loads of like, and I'd never quite made the like, you know, like you're in a training session, they're like, "Right, these girls put on bibs," and you pretty much go, "Right, that's their match day squad that they're looking at. No worries." But I know that there's 16 to 23. My name needs to be there, because if I can get there, that's an opportunity for me to get onto the field and show them what I can do. So I was like, just worry about getting on the bench, which is as a starter where you imagine you will be, unless the girl that's in the starting shirt before you gets injured, or you come in and blow the water off of everyone. Like, likelihood is your first cap is going to be coming off the bench. So I was like, make sure that you are like the biggest asset to a bench they've ever seen. So I was really like pushing to make sure that I was there. I hadn't made the first, like, I can't remember who the first game was. Hadn't quite made it. We had 5 games of autumn internationals.
Right.
They announced the squad for the first 2 games, and I wasn't on it. I was like, never mind. Like we set the girls, because when they go and play, they represent all of us. Like, so we set the girls up, make sure they're all right. Then we came back into training like a couple of weeks later, and then they announced, like, here's our match day squad for Scotland, Ireland. Part of me thought, I can't remember who the other one was. But anyway, and my name was on the board, and I was like, holy shit, my name's on the board. So for Scotland, I was the starting blindside flanker.
Wow.
And then for Ireland, I was on the bench, and I was like, holy shit balls, this is fucking great. And I had to just like, because I'd worked so hard for that moment, and we're just sat like in the team room on our chairs, our notepads out, waiting to have like a bit of a training talk. Right, here's the game plan, here's what we're covering in training, let's do a bit of analysis. Usually you announce the squads later on.
Right.
Brian came in and was like, no, tell them who is in there. You've already got it. Don't make them second guess. Let's just give them longer to prepare, because if we tell them at the start of this camp,
they've got the whole camp to prepare and the whole other camp to prepare, as opposed to work hard, work hard, work hard, learn multiple roles. Now we'll announce where you are.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's like trying to learn like audition reels for like 4 different characters.
Yeah,
and
yeah, of
they go,
course.
and you've got this part where
Yeah.
like, and now showtime is tomorrow, and you go, okay, holy shit.
I've got to try
let's
and
go.
yeah.
So actually he flipped it on its head and it was quite clever, but I was sat there. I can't remember who was sat next to me. I think it was Kelsey Jones and one of the other girls, and they just like grabbed my legs and were like, squeeze my legs. And I was like, keep it together. And everyone's like, right, good to train. Everyone's like, England tree, Cymru, way, let's go. And I then like just quickly ran behind a whiteboard in the team room to just go, I need a moment, because otherwise I'm gonna like drop to the floor and cry.
Did you cry?
Yeah. Ryan Jones then came behind the whiteboard. Oh, I'm getting emotional.
Oh, amazing.
He came behind the whiteboard and he gave me a massive hug. And he was like, you did it, kid.
Oh, wow. That's unreal.
And it was so lovely. And I remember like just going like, oh my God, I did, done it. Yeah.
I suppose that must be though, and I can imagine the whole reason behind the emotions now is the journey you had been on to get to that point is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you'd already faced so much adversity, and you'd already put a goal, and it was 5 years after a diagnosis. It wasn't like, oh, you've came back and all of a sudden you've got it. There's been so much work in between that diagnosis to getting that first cap to one. No wonder it is an emotional roller coaster for you at the end of the day. Like, so the fact that you're getting emotional now, I think it also just highlights what it means to you.
Yeah, and I think it's been a long time that somebody's gone, right, talk from point A to point now. So yeah, just
wow.
It was the best feeling ever.
Was it? I can I can only begin to imagine what it was like to get a first cap for a country like that.
Yeah. And my first start was against Scotland. The other team was Spain. That's who it was. The other team was Spain.
Wow.
So I come off the bench for Spain. I started for Scotland, and I come off the bench for Ireland.
That's
but
amazing.
when I played for Scotland, the first 20 minutes, I got a turnover. I was like, yes, I belong here.
Well, 100%. I mean, the fact that you got 6 caps, was it one of those ones that the more you played, the more you settled into that role, and it was like, I belong on a Welsh international now, and actually I can really push on.
I don't know. I think the imposter syndrome stays with you. I think if you were to speak to some of the girls now who are like 20 odd caps, like the imposter syndrome is like real. And then I think, so I'd had three caps. No, I'd had 4 caps. No, I hadn't. I'd had 4 caps, because then we went into 6 Nations and then COVID hit. Oh. So COVID, I think, and then in COVID we had like changeovers of coaches. We did some work with Ollie, what's his name? Ollie Phillips. We did some work with him. He was amazing. Right. But then he kind of was like our mentor during COVID, kind of someone dropped the idea to me, like, how do you think about playing a hooker? We've got a lot of back rows and we need more depth in the front row. And I think but I became a bit of a people pleaser and like, yeah, whatever you need from me. Yeah. And I ended up probably just falling out of love with it a little bit. Right. Having to learn how to become a hooker on my own in COVID. Yeah. It's like when it's such a technical position. I was like, what can I do? They were like, go down to the park and throw a ball at a tree. I was like, going to say, is it target practice? Right, okay. So I did that. And I was like, but I don't know if I'm doing it right. Like, there's nobody here to tell me. It looks a bit funny. You need to do these drills to help. So I was on YouTube doing all this stuff. And so I think, so after COVID, then I had 1 cap at hooker. And then I kind of hung up my international boots in 2021. Right. And is it something that you miss? Is it something you want to go back to, even if it's not at international level? I've got babies now. I've got Flo, and I think because we weren't professional at the time, I was playing my club. Then I was playing for Gloucester,
Right.
And then the following season I played for Bristol. So, but I was working in Swansea, like as like a, with a, as like a in a manager role.
Yeah.
So I would work on a Monday, like 8 till 2, leave work, drive to Bristol, get back home, train ready in Bristol for 4, full training session there. Probably won't leave Bristol until about 9:30. I'd get home at about 11:30, do the same thing again on a Tuesday. Yeah. Wednesdays, then I'd work late. And then Thursdays, I do the same, like get up back and forth to Bristol. Yeah. Saturdays was a game day, up in Bristol was our home game. So I was then not being put forward in terms of promotional work, paid work, that I was like, and I was then trying to be a fitness instructor as well to try and make a bit of extra money to afford the petrol to get up to and I was like that, oh my God, I'm actually paying to play rugby. And then I started to really lose my love. And then I think that's where I kind of was like, oh, do you know what? I want to step away before I go, I don't care about rugby anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, at the moment I'm just looking after my body, staying fit,
teaching yoga. Enjoyed my session. Enjoyed that session the other week. It was good.
Thank you very much. But also then, like getting into my CrossFit a little bit, but I'm also like, oh, maybe there is like this little scratch I need to itch when it comes to rugby. I'm not sure if it is rugby or whether it is something else. I don't know. Maybe this is where I go back to my majorette band, marching band days, and I become the best marching band barrelier person in Wales. I'm joking.
I hope so. I'd pay to watch that.
Yeah, but I've then thought about triathlons. I thought about adventure racing. Nothing's quite landed yet where I go, oh, and that's probably because I've got like an 8-month-old.
But 100%, it takes up all your energy.
So
it takes up all your energy.
There probably will be a scratch that I need to itch at some point. But for now, I can look back on my rugby and feel very, very proud. 100%. Like my stories, everyone's got their own stories, which makes them go, wow, look what I've been through. And I feel quite blessed that mine is the way it is.
No, thank you so much for sharing it, Robyn. Robyn, one last thing we ask everybody on the show is, if you could give someone one piece of advice, and it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be related to sport, but what would that piece of advice be?
Oh.
Put you on the spot.
One piece of advice. Be kind, because everybody you see is going through something.
Good advice. Good advice. Robyn, thank you so much for coming on Hobby of a Lifestyle. It's been amazing. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for making me cry, silly man.
Sorry. Sorry, but it's authentic.
I know.
And it's real. Right. So thank you so much.